Hey, Glenn, good to see you. I'll do the intro later while we're kind of warmed up, but we're talking about voting season right now, and it's good to get out early. I guess it's because so that you can allocate resources and know who's gone to the polls. Everybody's sophisticated enough these days to know who's already gone to the polls. Is that pretty much right?
Well, there's a couple things in play. I mean, obviously, we do know who votes early. So that helps us kind of keep score at the time. But honestly, the bigger thing, in 2020, Republicans kind of got their clock cleaned a little bit. But it would have been a lot worse had it rained on Election Day. We used to always say that low voter turnout favors Republicans over Democrats. But it doesn't anymore because, like in November of 2020, the majority of the Democrats' votes were already in the bag. They voted early. Not so much for Republicans. So we were hoping that, our voters voted on Election Day. We still got beat, but it was a nice weather that day. If it had been raining, we would have gotten killed. And that's the fear again this year is, there are some diehard Republicans that will go in a tornado to vote. But there are some that are moderate Republicans that really, really bad weather may keep them away. And we can't afford to have that this year. That could be the difference between winning and losing an election.
Well, I talked to Mike Cherry the other day, and he's a pastor. So maybe Mike Cherry from the 66. So maybe we can. I've got my Spirit of VMI cap. I'm going to put on just for a second, just for the camera, and take it back off again. Hey, today we are talking with Delegate Glenn Davis from the 84th District of Virginia Beach. Is that right, Glenn?
It is. Mm-hmm.
Yep. And this is the Spirit of VMI Political Action Committee. This is our election 2021 interview series where we're interviewing candidates for House of Delegates seats. As is our purpose at the Spirit of VMI, is we're trying to do what we can to stand watch over VMI with regard to legislators and legislature as it unrolls in the Commonwealth, as we're trying to sort of lead off things that may harm VMI as much as we possibly can. Today is August 31st, 2021, and we're getting close to September 17th, which is the first day. We were just talking about voting season versus voting day, and so we really appreciate Glenn taking the time to or Delegate Davis. Do you mind if I call you Glenn? It's just
Glenn's fine. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. As the incumbent, to take some time and talk with us about what's going on in his district, why Glenn Davis in the 84th, and then also talk, quickly about some VMI stuff. So Glenn, we got about 8 questions. One of those questions is a sort of a super question. It's nested with VMI stuff. It's right toward the end. We're sort of flipping this around because I think that we're trying to get this out to more people who don't really know much about VMI, but can identify with you or understand where you stand on the key issues that you're running for. And then later on, we'll get to the VMI stuff so that VMI people can see where Glenn Davis stands on VMI. We're good to go with that? Yep,
all good.
Okay. We've done these interviews already for Mary Margaret Castleberg in the 73rd, Tim Anderson in the 83rd. I'm sure he's right next to you. Gina Ciarcia up in the 2nd in Northern Virginia. Mike Cherry in the 66th. We've got Tara Durant coming on board. J.D. Maddox in the 45th. Mark Early, Chris Hughes, Jason Ballard, and Ronnie Campbell is what we've got set up so far. So we got a full plate, and we appreciate having and I think hopefully we're going to get some from the other side of the house too. We've thrown out invitations, but not gotten much response to see where they stand on things as well. So if you're ready, I'm just going to go ahead and pitch the first question to you.
Definitely.
Okay, so bridging the political divide is an issue. I think we'll see it in the country. Certainly see it in Virginia. Don't know if you see it in your district or not, but Virginia, like the country as a whole, has become greatly and severely and dangerously divided along party lines. What have you done during your delegate tenure to bring Virginians together, and how will you continue to do that?
Well, so I've always believed that our job is to move Virginia forward, is to get things done. I've never believed that, putting your head in the sand solves any problem, right? I'm an entrepreneur, and I love solving problems. So I've always been the person that's worked across the aisle. Back in 2014, we had a major healthcare issue. We were talking about Medicaid. I wrote the Medicaid reform and expansion bill back in 2014 and modeled George Allen's welfare reform legislation when he was governor back in 95, which was so successful in a bipartisan manner. And 2018, we started to get things done in healthcare. I've worked across the aisles with Schuyler Van Valkenburg on helping teenage Republicans and Democrats have a day that they could have a excused absence from school, to be more involved in the political or be more engaged in politics and the political environment. Work with Danica Rome on helping those less fortunate have easier access to the documentations they need to file for free and reduced lunches for their kids and children. I've worked on school choice with Democrats. I know Democrats traditionally don't like school choice, but there are many communities that their students don't have the same opportunities to reach their full potential because of the challenges they have, whether they be physical or mental disabilities or just because of lack of resources. So I've always believed that it's not about thumping your chest or being philosophical. I have very conservative beliefs, but it's about getting things done to move things better for all Virginians. And I've always been one to work across the aisle to do that.
And you plan to do the same thing right now?
Definitely. I do believe that Republicans will take back the House of Delegates, but when we do, we need to make sure that we bring the other side to the table. Look, we can all have great ideas, but none of us have the wisdom to foresee every unintended consequence. And I've always believed the more people you have around the table, the better the discussion is, the better the outcome may be, because you have that chance to have the conversations and hopefully understand the unintended consequences and better prepare for them. So I think that you need to have all voices. I think we need a conservative solution, but we need all voices around the table.
Absolutely. Okay. So right to work is next. In the 2020 General Assembly, Lee Carter and Senator Dick Saslaw introduced some bills that would effectively end Virginia's right to work status as we know it right now. Do you support the existing law that we have with regard to right to work?
I do support it for two reasons. The first is a financial reason to Virginia and the taxpayers. The rating agencies, Standard & Poor's and Moody's, have always kept us at AAA bond rating. And one of the reasons that they have done that when times were the toughest is they said because of our right to work, and if we lose that bond rating, the cost of money, the interest for us to do our big capital projects, think transportation projects, etc., the interest rate goes up on those bonds. And that costs Virginians more for us to move infrastructure forward. So that's the first reason why it's so important. The second reason is we have to understand that all right to work means is that no one should have to pay someone or some entity to have their job. We can have unions in Virginia already. What the unions want is the ability to say, you can't accept a job unless you tithe to me. As far as I'm concerned, there's only one institution in our nation that, should deserve to be tithed to, and that's even, voluntary, and that's our churches, right? But no one should be forced to tithe to an organization solely for the purpose of taking a job. But if someone wants to join a union, that opportunity already exists for them.
Do you think that it makes the right to work laws as they are right now make Virginia a more attractive place to bring businesses in?
110%. We are one of the best places to locate a company to because of our right to work laws. The businesses have come here even say that, and it would jeopardize our ability to grow economically if we got rid of right to work, and there's no reason to get rid of it.
So on to the next thing, veterans. Do you have a lot of veterans in your district?
I do. Hampton Roads probably has the highest population of veterans in the U.S., and my district is right smack in the middle of Virginia Beach. I'm probably about a mile and a half as a crow flies from Dam Neck. So,
oh, awesome. We probably have some common friends that are veterans and former Navy guys and pilots, and I spent some time down in Oceana as well. So how can Virginia better retain and leverage the veteran community once they've retired from, and not just Hampton Roads, but Virginia in general?
Well, I've always said our veterans are our biggest asset, but our biggest challenge. They're our greatest asset because they come out of the military, and in many cases, especially down here, with some very unique skill sets that they can then leverage into becoming part of the workforce, to bring forth, high-tech businesses to relocate to Virginia because of that workforce, or start their own businesses as entrepreneurs in this new tech space or cybersecurity space or other areas. The challenge is we have to keep them here. And that's been the difficult part. I think, Glenn Youngkin recently put forward that he's going to not tax the first 40% of all of our military retirees' pay, which is a huge step towards keeping our veterans here. You can't blame our veterans from leaving such a beautiful state when the cost of staying here is so high compared to some other states. But if we stop taxing their retirement benefits, they'll stay here. And, our retirees come out at such an age where they've got the ability to go back into the workforce and continue to help grow that economy and bring that next level of innovation in our economic sectors here. So I think that's the biggest thing out of the gate, is making sure that we don't tax it. Next is helping our veterans when they come out get either the work credentials or the academic credits for their skill sets. We've worked on this quite a bit in the House of Delegates, but there's still a little bit of a mismatch between the language that the private sector speaks and the acronyms used many cases in the military. And our universities understanding the skill sets that our veterans should get credit for when they come out, as well as the private sector understanding the unique skill sets some of our veterans have, coming out of the military.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, when you try to build a resume after having spent time in the military, there's not a direct one-to-one correlation with what you've done. Although in most cases, what you've done has some gravity to it, and being able to translate that, just in a resume or in an interview is challenging and may require some coaching. So I'm glad to hear that there's an initiative and that there are people that are listening that are trying to help that out.
Definitely.
Healthcare in Virginia. What's the status of access to healthcare in Virginia right now? What have you done to help with that?
Well, so probably I've done a couple of things. The first is, I mentioned earlier, back in 2014, I was one of the co-authors on the Medicaid reform legislation. Obamacare, I think, was a really bad policy from the federal level. And one of the reasons why is it created this gap in every state in the nation of individuals that used to have insurance that no longer had insurance, because part of Obamacare was the mandate that the states would increase Medicaid, expand Medicaid. The Supreme Court ruled it unconstitutional, and instead of our president saying, "Okay, I've just created this huge gap of people without insurance, let's back up," he didn't. He moved forward, and it impacted 400,000 Virginians through no fault of their own. And many of them, in some cases, were individuals that were part of veteran families, stuff like that. I know our veterans have their own insurance, but parents and children. So we moved forward and got that legislation crafted in 2018. Something finally came out to help solve that. I fought against the step therapy program for 4 years. There used to be in Virginia, if your doctor prescribed a treatment for you, the insurance company could then come forward and deny it and say you had to fail on these alternative, less expensive treatments first for sometimes as long as a year. Many of those diseases Virginians would face with were life-threatening. So now insurance companies no longer have that ability to be your doctor. And then lastly, one of the big pushes I had was for the legalization of medical CBD oil. Some look at it as kind of medical marijuana. And I got heavily involved in that because of the experiences that many of our veterans came to me with specifically around PTSD and how, medical CBD has been able to, and specifically in some cases, the inhalation has been able to help them with PTSD. And so I got heavily involved in that. Was the patron of the bill. I think it was back in 17, Chief Code back in 18, and we finally got medical CBD oil passed. So Virginians could have access to it. In many cases, it now supplements opioids in some cases for pain reduction, that sort of thing.
Very good. Very good. What's the job situation like in Virginia right now?
So there are more jobs.
Yeah, employment-wise.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, there are more jobs than there are individuals. It depends on the sector, I think, that you're talking about. But even the manufacturing sector, I was with a rather large manufacturing company in my district a few weeks ago, and they started about $18 an hour, and they're having a hard time getting workers. When the federal government is paying people to stay home, it's really difficult sometimes to compete with that. Even if the federal government is paying, some cases are paying more than what you'd be paid in the hospitality sector. But even if it's a little less, you're still incenting people to stay home and not go back to work. So there are more jobs than there are people willing to go fill them at this point. Hopefully, when the federal government stops, supplementing this type of scenario, we start filling those jobs. The most important thing, though, is not just growing jobs, but growing jobs in the new innovative industries. When you start looking at cybersecurity, when you start looking at artificial, intelligence or virtual reality and that sort of thing, augmented reality, we need to start becoming the leader in those areas, and we can. And we definitely have the experts down here, many of whom obviously are coming out of our military.
Yeah, would that be part of your plan to get the economy moving again in the right direction?
Which part?
The sourcing of those types of technology jobs.
Oh, definitely. So I chaired the cybersecurity subcommittee in the General Assembly a few years ago, and the goal of that was to start bringing forward not only the pieces of education that were necessary in our higher universities and making sure that we had people coming out with their degrees in these fields, but also to help identify the workforce that we had to go ahead and use them to attract either startup companies in that space or some other companies to locate here that were in that space. I think there's a lot of industries that have long lifespans, but cybersecurity, blockchain technology, artificial intelligence, all those are in their infancy. And we know that they're just on the beginning part of a very long a trend line of growth that Virginia should be able to lead the way on.
Right. That would lead us to education, I'm sure. You talked a little bit about education. We were talking about bridging the political divide, but specifically with regard to education as an issue, what have you done to improve educational opportunities for Virginians across the state? And what do you think that you will do to better ensure that Virginians get good education?
Well, I've been a huge proponent of school choice in charter schools. I helped start a charter school in Virginia Beach. It's one of 8 charter schools that we have in the Commonwealth. It's 77% minority, 49% free and reduced lunches. It's an international baccalaureate program, and 2 years ago we had the highest average SOL test score for every SOL test in the city compared to every other school in the city, including our governor schools. We know school choice works. We know any educational scenario where wraparound services are provided to provide those additional resources necessary to certain communities allows them to reach their full potential. So I've been a huge advocate of that, and I've traveled various places around the country to see the success and what we could have in Virginia, whether it be helping communities or helping those with disabilities, including those on the autistic spectrum, and seeing some charter schools that were able to bring significant success and assistance to those on the spectrum. And that's something we need to do in Virginia here as well. Additionally, we need to help grow the students coming out of high school that can walk right into the workforce with, well-paying jobs and having skills right out of high school. Right now to get an advanced diploma in Virginia, you've got to have 2 years of 2 foreign languages or 1 year of 3 foreign languages, or 3 years of 1 or 2 years of 2. There should be no reason why you can't take 2 years of 2 advanced whatever, robotics, advanced manufacturing, and still get an advanced diploma. Why is it that to get an advanced diploma today is just like getting an advanced diploma when you and I were in high school, right? I would say that robotics and manufacturing is just as advanced as foreign language today, but for some reason we still have this stigma over anyone that wants to take what we consider, technical classes and that sort of thing. And that needs to change. We got to get rid of that stigma, because not only can kids come out today out of high school with jobs paying, 60, 70, in some cases, 6-figure jobs out of high school, but secondly, there's an opportunity for them to walk in to significant careers where we don't have the workforce today to begin with that need to continue to grow in Virginia.
So we've talked about local issues, and before we close this thing up, I have a cluster of VMI questions that I'd like to ask you, but then I'm going to come back to see if there's a market difference in any one of these policy issues between you and your opponent that you'd like to talk about and to identify for us. But before that, VMI, you're familiar with VMI. Have you ever been to VMI?
I have. Back in 2016, Mike Corso took me to a game up there in an RV. We were actually going to put the RV on the drill field, but they didn't let us do that year.
That's funny. I just talked to Mike Corso today. What a small world. He's a good man. So VMI has a mission statement. I'm going to read you a couple of excerpts, and there's a couple of things, some data points I'd like to trot out for you, and then ask you what you think about all these things. But first, I'm going to look at the VMI mission statement and its honor system and its system of military discipline and rigor. But for the mission statement, VMI believes that the measure of a college lies in the quality and performance of its graduates and their contributions to society. A bunch of other words, and then VMI will produce advocates of the American democracy and free enterprise system. And that's a key. I underlined that, and I'll talk about that just in a second. And graduates will be ready as citizen soldiers to defend their country in time of national peril. VMI also shall provide to qualified young men and women undergraduate education of the highest quality, embracing engineering, science, and the arts, conducted and facilitated by the UNATE VMI system of military discipline. So the first part that I underlined was a part about the American democracy and free enterprise system. And one of the reasons why the spirit of VMI PAC is in its existence is to caution against a curriculum that would challenge the free enterprise system at VMI, and not just free enterprise system as far as economics go, but just the democratic way of life. That we are fearful that there is a way coming that would encourage a foundation that's based on racism, and we're trying to keep that from happening, and we're trying to keep that from being legislated to VMI, as you've seen in the past, year or so through actions from, one of our own, so to speak. Do you have any commentary on that?
That the threat's real, and it's unfortunate. This has found its way already into our public school systems. I gave a number of speeches in committee last year. I'm on the subcommittee that this type of legislation kind of came to for K-12, and I gave some speeches in full committee and on the floor of the House, and just recently again during the special session. We do not need to be a society that, based on one color of one's skin, you're either an oppressor or you're a victim. And it undermines not only the whole, wording of Martin Luther King Jr., being judged by the content of your character, not the color of your skin, but it undermines the whole concept that all of us in America have their chance to reach our full potential. And it's all about, that American dream. And so we need to protect that. I think that it's very threatening with what we're finding. It's very threatening when you see a curriculum like we did in Virginia Beach, where there was a breakout session, and the Virginia Board of Education literally in a breakout session said the best thing that a white person could do is admit they're racist. which inherently is the definition of racism when you judge the content based on someone's skin color. So I hope it never finds its way into a university system. I know it already has, probably voluntarily, into some of them. We've all read the reports recently. But I hope it never gets mandated on institutions like VMI. But we're fighting very hard to keep it out of K-12. We do need to make sure that history in our nation and our state is accurate and reflects, the accuracy of events, etc. But we've got to make sure we don't go forward and create a society that divides us as opposed to brings us together. And that's exactly, unfortunately, what I think is starting to transpire.
Yeah, and so part of this organization that we have is to support candidates, but also try to hold them accountable to the things that we talk about and the things that we believe in. And so when it comes down to it, if you're reelected, we'd ask you to pay attention to that, to make sure that in whatever way that you can try to keep that out of, well, not only the lower education, primary school education and high school, but also in advanced education as well, as much as we possibly can in state schools. It's bad news. The second part of that mission statement was a part about discipline, and which you could roll up into the rat line at VMI, if you're familiar with that. Sort of the crucible. I wouldn't say discipline would roll up the honor system, but the honor system is also a crown jewel of VMI. Both of those things provide, and I think the honor system is really the crown jewel. I'd say that probably the second most recognizable thing about VMI, other than the honor system, is the rat line. But both those things have been challenged, at least tangentially, and one of the reasons why the PAC is in existence is to try to protect those things as much as we can from legislative harm. So do you have anything to say about that, as far as do you think that anything fundamentally should change necessarily about the way VMI conducts itself?
I look at the honor system at VMI the same way I look at the Constitution of the U.S. and our founding fathers. They put an amazing document together that has lasted 400 years on very simple foundations that have created significant success and growth and an opportunity. And y'all put together some pretty simple phrases that gave us some of the best leaders in the world. You will not lie, cheat, or steal, nor tolerate those that do. It's pretty simple. It's pretty clear. It's one of the bases for your institution. And somehow that's given us, amazing leaders, from George Patton and Chesty Puller to Mel Brooks, of all people. I mean, when you talk about that diversity. So I would say, if anything, we need to leave you alone and let you give us more individuals like those. I mean, I would say that we need that honor system in politics, but unfortunately, I don't think most politicians will get past their own campaigns without breaking that honor system. So, it's, I admire institutions like VMI that have those strict rules. No one has to go to VMI. And everyone knows when they go to VMI what they're getting into and what they sign on to. There are institutions that are not that strict, that do not have that type of honor system. And people are more than welcome to go there, and they can leave VMI and still go there. But VMI has a structure that is founded upon. It's why I think we've seen the success and the just amazing amount of alumni that have come out of there, that have been leaders in the world, and don't break or don't fix something that's not broken. So that's my thought with y'all.
Well, I appreciate that. VMI's got a pretty good track record of success in punching above its weight class, as one of my really good friends would say. The value of VMI is, if you don't show it, then people may not really realize it. So I'm gonna read some stats to you and then ask you another question about that. Then we'll get off the VMI stuff here in a second. So VMI has had a very strong track record of enrollment of cadets that are from an underrepresented population. So that's minorities or non-white U.S. citizens and permanent residents, students receiving some Pell Grant contribution sometime within a 5-year period of their cadetship. 25 or older, so older students when they come in, and cadets from 34 localities across the state that are underrepresented when it comes to people graduating from school. And that number has increased from 2014 to 2020 from 25 to 30, 29, 24 to 35%. 35% of VMI cadets come from that underrepresented population. 24% of cadets are from minorities, strictly minorities themselves, and that climbs every year. So VMI tries hard to spread its wealth around when it comes to people being accepted and embraced into VMI. And then there's some other stats too that happen to talk about the value of a VMI degree. That VMI is second only to WNL. Actually, it's tied with WNL when it comes to the net present value of a diploma at VMI, and WNL is second only to Stanford in a very similar category too. So VMI is number one in promotion of public service. It is in the nation. It is most likely to land you a career that you would enjoy. Is number two behind Stanford University. It is number two in the state for best value college in Virginia, and it's number three in the nation for best small colleges. And there are more that go along with that. And it doesn't. You don't have to go very far to look at what graduates like George C. Marshall and others. And you spoke about a few others before too. So all this is a long preamble to sort of set you up to ask you a question that when it comes time to recommend and or vote for appropriations for VMI to continue to operate in a manner in which it needs to, would you commit to supporting VMI in that effort?
Oh, definitely. And honestly, if you can give me more graduates, we should give you more money. I mean, the success of VMI, and I wasn't an attendee, but obviously, just understanding, what the process is over there and the experience. It's not just the academics; it's the discipline. I mean, I was in RTC for 3 years in high school, and honestly, looking back, I wish I had gone, to a VMI or into a military, because where else? There's very few institutions you can go to where not only do you get the academic learning, where there are great institutions in the nation to get that, but get the discipline and the self-confidence to be able to persevere over some of the greatest challenges we're all going to have in life, and to be structured, right? When I looked at the earning potential of a VMI graduate, I didn't think hardly any of it was attributable to the academic teachings at VMI. Is attributable to all the other things that come with being a graduate of VMI that you don't get at other universities. So I think that, the more that y'all are able to grow and scale what you're producing, we should be willing to invest in, because they're tremendous graduates. The only thing I can say, if we could just draw events around Virginia and make sure they stay in Virginia, all the better. But, we'd love to have more of your graduates coming through those gates.
Well, I really appreciate that answer. And I appreciate you putting up with that cluster of questions that probably took 10 minutes for us to get through. So I apologize for it taking so long, but thank you for that. The last thing I would ask you is, in addition to supporting and defending VMI, like we already talked about, what are the top 3 objectives that you'd like to achieve as soon as you're reelected?
Well, so the first thing is I do want to see school choice in Virginia. We've had some challenges, but I'm very passionate about the underdog. I always have been my whole life, and maybe there's some personal thing on that. So I always want to make sure that anyone has a chance to reach their full potential regardless of zip code, and we need school choice to do that. So that's probably my biggest passion. My second biggest passion is entrepreneurism. We need to make sure 80% of all jobs come from small businesses. Those businesses are started by entrepreneurs. That's where innovation happens. Virginia's 49th in the nation when it comes to the best state for starting a business. We've got to fix that. There's so much that we need to do. And we all understand the fewer barriers there are to starting a business, the more likely someone is to do it. So we got to get rid of those barriers. And the last thing I think that, and there's a whole bunch of things I want to be involved in. But the third is, fits in that realm as well, is making sure that the landscape is there, that people can afford to still, live in Virginia, take care of their families. The cost of living here is not as high as we see today. There are people moving away, veterans and others, because the cost of living is lower someplace else, or the wages are higher. We can have lower cost of living and higher wages in Virginia if we just get our economics straight here. If we make sure that our tax policies are appropriate, and fix a few things. So I think if we can get those three things done, a lot of other stuff over time will start to solve itself.
Okay, so if I heard you right, I heard school choice, entrepreneurship, and got to make Virginia affordable to live in again.
Yes. So people aren't moving away. We need the resources. Okay.
All right. Any additional thoughts? Any save rounds?
No, I really appreciate y'all doing this. I know VMI has been under a microscope, and it's taken a few shots recently, no pun intended. But I will tell you that, it's a very loud minority that seems to be attacking you. The overwhelming majority knows what y'all produce. We know the value of the alumni, and we're behind you. And if we can ever be of assistance, please let us know. But thank you for everything you're doing. And I appreciate the advocacy, because not only does it reach us and my colleagues, but it starts to spread your message further around the Commonwealth as well. So,
well, that's good news, and I appreciate that. And so what I'd like to do is say it in front of everybody. Glenn Davis for the 84th House District in Virginia Beach. Vote for Glenn Davis. We are the Spirit of VMI. My name is Matt Daniel. I'm the chairman of the Spirit of VMI, and we are endorsing Glenn Davis for the 84th in 2021. So thank you for standing for the things that we can stand for, Glenn, and we really appreciate it.
Well, Matt, thank you for having me on here. Look forward to seeing you in person soon, hopefully.
Yes, sir. Vote early, everybody. Vote early.
Yes. Thank you.
Thanks,